On 5 News at Westminster, on the day Britain decides to quit the EU and David Cameron to quit Downing Street, the Prime Minister says he'll step down by October after the UK voted to leave.
I love this country and I feel honoured to have served it. And I will do everything I can in future to help this great country succeed.
The man tipped to succeed him says Britain now has a glorious opportunity.
I believe the British people have spoken up for democracy in Britain and across Europe.
We've got our country back!
Nigel Farage hails the victory as the first step in the end of the European Union. But across the United Kingdom and the continent, the repercussions are being felt. Scotland voted overwhelmingly to stay in the EU. Nicola Sturgeon confirmed she is drawing up plans for a second independence referendum. Billions wiped off the value of Britain's top companies, and fears mortgages, fuel and food prices could all rise. And so many unanswered questions remain. We have the full story and what it means for you. Hello, I'm Sian Williams and welcome to 5 News live from Westminster on a day that has seen Britain's political landscape and its future transformed. The UK has voted to leave the European Union. That is the momentous decision that's been taken by the British people, and it's one that's likely to change everything. And those changes have already begun. David Cameron resigned this morning, saying it was now time for fresh leadership. Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage have hailed a glorious opportunity and a new dawn, but it sparked economic turmoil and the prospect of the breakup of the United Kingdom. And this is why 17.4 million people, or 51.9%, voted in favour of leave. 16.1 million people voted Remain, a 48.1% share. Leave's victory, more than 1.2 million votes. In a moment, we'll be looking at what happens next. First, though, here's our political editor, Andy Bell.
He decided to call this referendum. He decided Britain should stay in, but the voters have decided the country should leave. And now he has had to accept the consequences.
I will do everything I can as Prime Minister to steady the ship over the coming weeks and months. But I do not think it would be right for me to try to be the captain that steers our country to its next destination. This is not a decision I've taken lightly, but I do believe it's in the national interest to have a period of stability and then the new leadership required.
It was clearly an emotional moment for his wife Samantha, and by the end, for him too.
I love this country and I feel honoured to have served it. And I will do everything I can in future to help this great country succeed. Thank you very much.
He took a gamble and he's lost. Now he's recognised reality and he's going.
They booed the man who may be taking over. Boris Johnson's become the standard bearer of the now triumphant Leave campaign. But today he was playing the statesman and praising the man he beat.
How sad I am that he has decided to step down, but obviously I respect that decision. I've known David Cameron for a very long time, and I believe he's been one of the most extraordinary politicians of our age.
But he said the voters had reached the correct verdict.
There is simply no need in the 21st century to be part of a federal system of government based in Brussels that is imitated nowhere else on earth. It was a noble idea for its time. It is no longer right for this country.
The total number of votes cast in favour of Leave was 82,000.
Early hopes of a Remain win soon faded, and through the night the results kept coming in, showing that Leave had pulled ahead. By the early hours of the morning, the man who lit this fuse 20 years ago was jubilant.
So we need, as I say, a Brexit government. We need the negotiations to start as soon as humanly possible. We need to start thinking globally about our future. And the other thing I think that needs to happen is that June the 23rd needs to become a national bank holiday, and we will call it Independence Day. Thank you.
As if there isn't enough going on, Labour MPs have put down a vote of no confidence in Jeremy Corbyn, saying their leader didn't work hard enough for a Remain vote.
I campaigned the length and breadth of this country on a party position which was that we should support remaining in Europe, recognising the many deficiencies of the European Union in order to reform it.
They were changing the guard at Buckingham Palace, appropriately enough, as David Cameron told the Queen of his plans. He leaves a country that's heading out of the EU and possibly Scotland leaving the UK after another referendum. Hardly the legacy he wanted. Andy Bell, 5 News.
So what exactly needs to be sorted out, and how quickly will it all happen? Well, in the next few months, the Conservatives will choose a new Prime Minister, and the SNP will set out their plans for a new Scottish referendum. But the terms of our split from the EU and the new deals we negotiate could take many, many years, as Catherine Jones reports.
Only 10 hours since the official result. 10 frenzied hours with the world's eyes upon us.
He is the first Conservative to win an outright majority.
And already so much has changed. Now work must begin quickly on the divorce that will dominate the government's agenda.
How much government time, how much civil servants' time is going to have to be spent now dealing with this rather than all the other priorities of the British government?
For the next 5 years or thereabouts, you might as well forget the rest of government. This is going to be all-consuming for the new Prime Minister, for the Cabinet and the civil service. We are 40 years integrated into the European Union. It's not going to take 40 years to come out of it, but it is going to take a long time.
Over the summer, the government must work up Britain's blueprint for backing out, ready for the new Prime Minister to trigger Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty, which sets out the legal process for a member state to leave. This gives the UK 2 years to negotiate its future relationship with the Union. All EU treaties stop applying to the UK, either on an agreed date or automatically once that 2 years is up. That's 80,000 pages of legislation to unpick, while the UK also works on its new relationship with the rest of the world. Was it right for David Cameron to add a leadership contest to that vast agenda?
No, he's not going in haste. He's set a period where he will be doing what many of us have asked him to do.
A febrile period where your party will be jostling.
Which was to provide the stability to, if he was going to resign, not to resign immediately, but to stay, give some stability. I would actually like that period to be a little longer.
The Trades Union Congress warned today Tory troubles must not distract from the real challenge of the coming months.
Well, frankly, I'm not worried about divisions in the Conservative Party. I'm worried about divisions in the country, and I'm worried about what it means for people's pay packets and their job security. And I hope that everybody will heed that call, that that has to be the priority for everybody.
The media circus outside Parliament will pack up and leave in days. The UK's departure from the EU will overshadow the government's work here for years to come. Catherine Jones, 5 News.
Well, the results have shown that the United Kingdom is anything but. Every region of Scotland voted to remain. Today, First Minister Nicola Sturgeon said her country is being taken out of the EU against its will, and a second referendum on independence is highly likely. So, would people vote differently this time? Simon Vigar finds out in Edinburgh.
Britain voted leave, Scotland did not. This morning, its First Minister said she would demand a second independence referendum to avoid being caught up in Brexit.
Scotland does now face that prospect. It is a significant and material change in circumstances, and it is therefore a statement of the obvious that the option of a second referendum must be on the table, and it is on the table.
44,987. On the ballot papers, 62% of Scotland voted to remain in the EU. Many people really don't want yet another referendum, but for some, it is a must.
I would be happy to be part of Europe. I'm not happy to be part of the UK, so I'm happy to vote to leave.
And that's a change on your vote from 2 years ago?
Definitely, and not just mine, my entire family.
Definitely, I think that the Scottish nation have not been represented well in the Brexit campaign. I just think that we're going to have to leave.
Not right away. I think you need a bit of a rest first, just to digest what's happened. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure really what's best. I don't think anyone really knows what's best.
I don't know. I don't know. You don't know what the future is, do you?
But you don't want another independence referendum here?
No, definitely not.
I pray and pray that it is not. I'm fed up with referendums.
Another referendum is on the cards, and flanked by the flags of Europe and Scotland, the First Minister had this message to EU migrants.
I want to take the opportunity this morning to speak directly to citizens of other European countries living here in Scotland. You remain welcome here. Scotland is your home and your contribution is valued.
The United Kingdom just became less united again, and there's only one way the leadership here is looking. Simon Viger, 5 News, Edinburgh.
Well, it's not just Scotland's future. The leader of Sinn Féin has called for a referendum on Irish unity. Northern Ireland as a whole voted to remain. Martin McGuinness says the British government no longer has a democratic mandate to represent the views of the people there. He says they should now be able to choose whether to leave the United Kingdom.
This is an unacceptable situation for us to find ourselves in against the backdrop of a vote which was in favour of Remain in the north, and for us to be dragged out of the European Union against our will is absolutely unacceptable.
Martin McGuinness, let's go back to Edinburgh now, though, and Simon Viger. Could we be looking at the breakup of the United Kingdom?
Absolutely, Sian. Sooner than anybody expected, including the SNP government here, an independence referendum is now back on the table. The First Minister saying it's democratically unacceptable that Scotland could be dragged out of Europe against its will. Remember, less than 2 years ago in the independence referendum, people here were told you can only guarantee Scotland's membership of the EU by voting no against independence. Well, look what's happened. But it will only happen, the referendum will only happen when the SNP are sure they can win the second one. Then they will press the button.
Simon, thank you. When the result of the vote was announced, the immediate reaction from the financial world was astonishing. Stock markets plunged and the pound fell to its lowest rate for more than 30 years. The Bank of England Governor Mark Carney gave reassurances that Britain's economy can cope, but it's likely to push up the cost of everything, from mortgages to petrol to our holidays, as Julian Drucker now reports.
The people have spoken, and this is where it's being heard loud and clear. This morning on trading floors across the city, extraordinary, historic and nail-biting times. One of the worst openings in the life of the FTSE, a Brexit bloodbath, which will be felt by millions in the pocket.
It is now 8:30. The FTSE has fallen more than 8%. That has wiped £120 billion off the value of the UK's 100 biggest companies. There is a lot of nervous energy in this room.
Look at those steep drops in sterling. After traders watched the PM's resignation, the FTSE made a partial recovery, helped in part by the Governor of the Bank of England attempting to calm nerves.
Some market and economic volatility can be expected as this process unfolds. But we are well prepared for this.
So how will the UK's finances affect yours? A fall in the pound's value will make holidays to the EU more expensive. A sterling slump may be felt at the pump. A possible interest rate cut divides the experts, but it would see mortgage payments lower. A rate cut will harm the over 60s, though.
This means lower interest rates for longer. And so if you are relying on savings as a retiree or a pensioner, then you're going to get even less interest than even you were on your savings. And that's the problem.
24 hours after she voted leave, Mandy at Manchester Airport says she regrets it.
I would go back to the polling station and vote to stay, simply because this morning the reality is actually hitting in and the regrets are filling in of actually that we have actually left EU. I'm worried about my future job. Hopefully when I finish my studies, is there going to be a job for me at the end?
These are unquestionably unprecedented times, but for how long? Uncertain times.
Well, Julian is live in the city now. Julian, the Remain campaign predicted economic chaos if we voted to leave. Were they right?
Sian, this has been such a volatile day. The FTSE's just closed down 3.2%. That is actually higher than it was this time last week, helped in part by the shares rallying for David Cameron, the ex-PM, soon to be. He still has some power in terms of moving the market. What about a possible Brexodus? Big companies leaving the UK? Not so at the moment, although financial giant JP Morgan has said it is looking to possibly moving some of its 16,000 UK staff. But a extremely violent day on the market, and we are yet to see whether there'll be long-term damage from it.
Julian, thank you. And still to come on the programme. Donald Trump arrives in the UK. What does he make of Britain's monumental decision? And
I think it's sad that a lot of people have voted to leave, but I think it's probably reflecting the fact that a lot of people are really struggling in their lives.
Why Labour's heartlands defied the party and voted leave. All that and more after the break. Welcome back. You're watching 5 News live from Westminster. World leaders have been giving their reaction to the Leave vote today. German Chancellor Angela Merkel says it's a watershed for Europe. Barack Obama says it won't affect our special relationship with the United States, while Donald Trump, the man who wants to be president, says the people of the UK have taken back their country. Peter Lane reports.
The flags are still flying, the EU is still functioning, but we are leaving. In Brussels, Brexit shockwaves.
There's no hiding the fact that we wanted a different outcome of yesterday's referendum. I am fully aware of how serious or even dramatic this moment is politically, and there's no way of predicting all the political consequences of this event, especially for the UK. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Le vote des Britanniques. Our neighbours tried to persuade us to stay. President Hollande today called the result a tough test for Europe.
Der heutige Tag.
And Angela Merkel warned other nations not to rush towards disunity. Within these corridors of power, there is concern about a domino effect, with the potential for others to seek their own exit one day. So how will it work inside this building when they come to negotiate the mechanics of a member state leaving the EU? Answer: we don't know, and they don't either, because it's never happened before. Away from the Commission building, Brussels, like every other European city, is taking in the news of the huge change coming.
It's like people give in to fear and populism instead to rational thought and, well, I would say love for Europe.
Do you care?
Actually not.
Makes no difference to you?
No difference.
I'm afraid what is going to happen to all my British friends who are in Brussels. They're crying, I can tell you, really.
With President Obama pledging the UK-US special relationship will endure, the man hoping to replace him was in Britain today and full of praise for Brexit.
I think it's going to end up being a great thing, and the beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing is your people have taken the country back, and there's something very, very nice about that.
Outside this building, an engraved stone honours one of the founding fathers of the European Union vision. That idea may not be crumbling, but for the first time it has been weakened. Peter Lane, 5 News, Brussels.
While Scotland, Northern Ireland and cities like London and Manchester went predictably, perhaps, for Remain, many places in the traditional Labour heartlands went against experts' predictions and voted Leave. One shock came from Sheffield. Dominic Reynolds has been finding out why.
It was decided in places like this, big English cities outside London. So where did Sheffield's surge of anti-EU feeling come from?
I voted to leave.
Like most people in this city, Suleiman's a Labour voter, but he didn't follow the Labour leader yesterday.
I don't listen. Well, the issue is like this. We must not listen. We have to use our mind.
Joe and Carla wanted to remain, but they understand why others here don't.
I think it's sad that a lot of people have voted to leave, but I think it's probably reflecting the fact that a lot of people are really struggling in their lives at the moment. I think it pushes people into sort of seeing things in terms of us and them.
Like a new change can bring the best for their lives.
In a clothing factory across the city, Carl is glad we're separating from Europe, and all his friends voted the same way.
You know, everyone's just had enough of the situation. And
what have you had enough of?
Just the fact that, you know, there's no jobs.
Outside is Kevin, born in the city, retired here, and proud of how Sheffield voted.
The rich people voted to stay in, and the poorer people, which is a lot more of them, voted to come out. They thought that they were going to wipe the floor and walk straight through, and that would be the end of the story. And unfortunately it's backfired, and now the Tory leaders had to resign, so we've got no Prime Minister.
Sounds like you quite relished the idea of giving them a bloody nose.
Oh, I did, yeah.
And on an estate above the city, partly refurbished, partly deserted, Kelly told me Brexit is about one half of the country sending a message to the rest.
I think it's about time that it was heard that it was the voice of the actual people. This is what we want, and I think it's a time that, you know, their voices were heard.
And does it feel like today they have been?
Definitely today. I mean, if you've been on Facebook recently, I mean, I think everyone, it was just like, Happy Independence Day, that's what they're saying.
Most voters we spoke to today said they listened to friends and social media more than politicians. The feeling here was yesterday people took a chance to say, now listen to us. Dominic Reynolds, 5 News in Sheffield.
Well, let's get a last word with our political editor, Andy Bell. I mean, talk about momentous, bigger day than any of us, I think, have seen.
Yeah, I've never seen a political story on this stage, on this scale, and all the time I've been reporting here. We're going to have a new Prime Minister, maybe a new Labour leader. We're heading out of the European Union. Scotland will have another referendum, almost certainly, on independence. And it all stems from that gamble by David Cameron, which has backfired so badly.
More from you, I'm sure, in the weeks to come. Thank you, Andy. That is it for this 5 News special. On the day it was announced Britain is leaving the European Union, the whole of the United Kingdom is reflecting on a new future, whatever that may bring. Thanks for watching. Goodbye for now.